Thousands of children are seen cheering and playing on the Marina Beach, enjoying the innocence and freedom of their childhood. There are also other children shouting and moving fast in the crowd, selling snacks and other small wares. Deprived of their childhood freedom, they have to work for their livelihood, for their survival. They do not have their parents to support them. Maybe these children are supporting their parents. Probably these child workers have migrated to the city, or their parents might have traveled long distances from their village to arrive at the city in search of a job, a living. Away from foul smoke and dirty garbage, from filthy noxious gutters, away from the tense concrete jungle, its gruesome noise and the mad race of automobiles, away, far away from all corruption and pollution. To the clean, green rural landscape, pastures, fields, woods and streams with fresh, limpid water, and to the innocent company of simple human folk. The term child labor usually brings to mind the street children, the rag pickers, small factory workers, or the children in shops and hotels. All these images are urban, but there are 11 million child laborers in India, of whom the urban are only 1 million, whereas rural child workers number 10 million, that is 91% of the total. They are invisible child labor, invisible children. This has become a rare sight in villages, children playing games. The children, most of them have stopped playing and their games seem to have come to an irrevocable end.
Only when we see a child working in a factory or working in some workshop, we consider them as child labor. But the real fact is that over 90% of the working children in India are concentrated in the rural areas. When we go through the countryside, we see children working in the farms, we see children working in tending cattle, we see children taking care of the siblings, but we never imagine this as child labor. Our general perception is that we see them as something normal. But if you look at the background of these children, most of the children never gets an opportunity to go to school. And so far, all the interventions on child labor is dealing only the visible forms of child labor. If you see all those children who are working in these visible forms of industries, that is less than 5% of the total child labor force in this country. But 95% of the children are working in the rural areas.
Okay, basically majority of the children who are working are rural based and agricultural based children who are working more than 12 to 14 hours. And these children are not fall under any act or government rules and regulations where these children are defined as child laborers. That is the worrying part on the legal side, where the children were not defined as child labor in the labor department, and these children were neither students nor child laborers. In this context, it is very important to address rural children, where not only rural children, where we feel that all forms of child labor should be abolished.
ఈ పాపని ఎందుకు బడికి పంపించలేదు?
అప్పుడు పంపలేదు సార్. అప్పుడు ఇది ఆర్థిక పరిస్థితుల వల్ల
ఆర్థిక పరిస్థితి అంటే
మరి ఏం జరగలేకున్నప్పుడు ఏం చేస్తాయి? పిల్లల్ని పట్టుకునే కాలం మేము పని పోతే పిల్లల్ని ఎవరు పట్టుకుంటారు? అందుకని పంపలేదు.
Causes of child labor. Belief and myths about child labor. Inadequate education system. Poverty. Illiteracy. Migration. Employment structure in unorganized sector. Occupational rigidities of the caste system. Proliferation of informal sector. Adult unemployment. 1999-2000 National Sample Survey shows that Andhra Pradesh leads the other states with the highest percentage of child labor. Let's begin there. Vandagallu is a village in the Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh. Agriculture is the main source of living. But with only one crop a year, the people had to keep looking up at the sky for rain. If they were lucky, 4 months of cultivation followed. For the rest of the year, they had to migrate to other places in search of a livelihood. A new hybrid variety of cotton seed is cultivated with considerable profit. To add to their profit, they avail themselves of cheap child labor, employing children, preferably female below the age of 14. Vandagallu has 291 households out of 416 with children in the age group of 5 to 14. 185 households send their children for work. The children in the other households are also ready to be employed.
Cotton seed cultivation farms, the employers would prefer to employ children, especially who are less than the 14 years. And also they would like to prefer girl children mostly. There is a one specific myth has been floated that the girls who have not attained the puberty can only enter into the fields. So by saying this, by propagating this type of myth, these owners can exploit these girl children and eventually their height and the height of the plant suit so that they can produce more number of pollination.
అంజన
వయసు ఎంత?
వయసు ఎంత?
తెలుసు నాకు
వయసు ఎంతనప్పా?
తెలియదు నాకు సార్.
స్కూల్కి పోయావా?
లేదు సార్.
ఉండరా వాళ్ళు? శ్రీదేవి అక్కడ ఉండారా? మిగతా వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు కదా అక్కడ?
ఉండారా?
ఉండరా?
పెద్ద పిల్లలు ఉండారు సార్.
పేరేట్రా?
మీ
పొలంలో ఏం చేస్తావు?
నానా నీళ్ళ కట్టేది, ఏమన్నా కొలుపు తీసుకునేది వచ్చేది.
ఎంతసేపు చేస్తావు అక్కడ?
ఆడ ఒక గంటన్నర చేసేస్తాను. తర్వాత ఇంటికి వస్తాను.
ఇంటికి వచ్చి
అన్నం తిని ఇక్కడ రెడ్డికి
వచ్చేస్తావు. రెడ్డి ఎన్ని గంటలకు గడుస్తాడు మళ్ళీ నీకు? మధ్యాహ్నమా
1 గంటకి అన్నం కడిచాడు. ఇంకా 1 గంటకి అన్నం కడిచి ఇంకా మగ్గలు కొంగుతాం అన్నం తిని. ఇంక మగ్గలు కొంగి ఇంకా 6 గంటలకి ఇంటికి వెళ్తాం.
6 గంటలకు ఇంటికి వెళ్తారు. ఇంటికి వెళ్ళిన తర్వాత ఏం చేస్తావు?
ఇంటికి వెళ్ళిన తర్వాత ఇంకా అదే ఏమైనా నీళ్ళు ఏమైనా కానొచ్చుకుంటానో ఇంకా అన్నం తింటాం, పండుకుంటాం.
ఆటలు గిటలు ఏం ఆడతావా?
ఏం ఆడలేదు.
When the children enter the cotton fields, they disappear behind the taller plants, and their labor robs the little ones of their childhood.
Girls are being considered equivalent to the work. Girls means the work. This thing is being started right from their home, and when they are being lured away or taken away to any industry or any place like as a domestic helps or in stone quarries, they are being double exploited. They are not being given wages. They are not been, though the wages are not been given to almost all the children, whatever they have been given a bit, but the girls are being more exploited in the sense that they are not being physically abused, they are also being sexually abused.
Kurnool district, we have got 86,501 children who are out of school, and a majority of these children are engaged in hazardous occupation like mining, cotton fields and other industrial activities like beedi making, etc.
Another site for child labor exploitation is the Black Stone Quarry, the famous Kadapa stone which is in great demand. Here is one such quarry in the village of Palkur. The tough job requires grown-up male laborers, but children work as helpers in conditions harmful to their physical safety and health, inhaling silicosis dust all the time.
ఇక్కడ మన పల్పూర్ గ్రామంలో నుంచి ఎంతమంది పిల్లలు గనుల్లోకి వెళ్ళి పనిచేస్తున్నారండి?
జనసర కొన్ని ఉండేళ్ళు ఉంటారు, కొన్ని లేనోళ్ళు ఉంటారు.
దాదాపుగా
చాలా చోటు
1000 మంది దండి ఉంటారు.
1000-1500 మంది వాళ్ళ తల్లిదండ్రులు అప్పటి పోయేతోళ్ళు దండిగా ఉన్నారు.
The Constitution of India, Article 24 states, "No child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory or mine or employed in any hazardous employment."
చిన్నప్పటి నుంచి నువ్వు ఎప్పుడన్నా ఇదే పనికి వెళ్ళా? బడికి ఎప్పుడైనా వెళ్ళావా?
బడికి పోతున్నా.
బడికి
పోయింది.
ఇంతకుముందు ఇప్పుడు మానేసావు కదా, ఏ క్లాస్ వరకు పోయావు? 3 వరకు చదివావు. 3 చదివి మానేసావు, ఈ పనిలోకి వెళ్తున్నావు. ఇప్పుడు ఒకవేళ నీకు మంచి అవకాశం ఇస్తే ఏం కావాలనుకుంటున్నావు? కాదు, ఏం అవ్వాలనుకుంటున్నావు?
ఏం కాలేదు.
స్కూల్స్ వచ్చింది కదా, స్కూల్లో చేర్పిస్తే బాగా చదువుకొని ఏం అవ్వాలనుకుంటావు?
నాకు అసలు రాదు.
Orissa is a state characterized by acute poverty and underdevelopment. It is ranked very low on the Human Development Index. Malnutrition and hunger deaths are quite common. %50 of the children of school-going age are not in school, which is a major violation of the right to education. Rural child labor is much rampant in 4 districts. This sample village is Sindhi Padar in Kalahandi district. 139 out of 177 households have their own lands. Forests nearby are also used for shifting cultivation. But the children here mostly work with their parents. Every family has 4 or 5 children, and that means that an elder child takes care of the younger siblings. They also help in the household chores, like collecting firewood or bringing water. Lack of good roads, transport, electricity and communication render villages like Sindhi Padar inaccessible.
नदीर नाम कुमड़ावाल नदी यही एरिया को आगु रास्ता घाट नाला ग्राम विकास 1993 मसीह यहाँ रास्ता आरंभ कला ये नाल ब्रिज कला ये ब्रिज जो भांगी देखुं ये ब्रिज वर्षा मसरे पानी जोर आसुथ जो सब होम पाइप बस होम पाइप सब काठ गंडी द्वारा पानी सब चोक हो पानी पास नक हेतु ओवरफ्लो होटा धोई जा आईटा ये जो रास्ताटा है रास्ता द्वारा ये 20-25 जन गाँव उपकार पाई जीवा सुविधा है।
The remote single-teacher school has become irrelevant and hence remains closed. West Bengal state had 6.3% of all child workers in the country in 1991. The district of Murshidabad is known for its dependence on the beedi making industry. The villages here are prone to be affected by frequent floods and waterlogging, which destroy the crops. Therefore, the people have given up agriculture and taken to the beedi industry. Large families with their children can be seen working together, rolling beedis in a village like Baliagati. Now they know that this work is hazardous. Long-time inhalation of the beedi leaves affects the workers with tuberculosis. According to a survey during 1996 to 1997, conducted by Murshidabad Authority, there were 3 lakhs of beedi workers and 88,000 of them were child workers.
Our school 2 বছর ধরে চলছে। আমার স্কুলে প্রায় শতাধিক ছাত্রছাত্রী আছে, কিন্তু এখানে দুঃখের বিষয় এই বিড়ি প্রধান এলাকায় অনেক ছাত্রছাত্রী অর্ধেক পথে স্কুল ছেড়ে দিতে বাধ্য হয়।
কারণ মূর্খর ব্যাপার, বিড়ি বানছে, খাচ্ছে, খাদ্য জুটেছে, পোশাক জুটাতে পারছে না, যেটা বলছে একটা করতে পারছে না, বালক সবাই করতে পারছে না, সন্তান ছেলে মেয়ে বেশি।
Baliagati village has some 700 children and less than half of them go to school. Now, what do the others do? They don't go to school because they don't like the school, and there is only one primary school which has only 3 rooms which can accommodate, I think, 150 children at a time. And with the pressure of children, the quality of teaching also is not up to the mark.
আমি সকালে উঠি দিয়ে দাঁত হাত মাজি সব দেখি ঘরে বিড়ি বানিয়ে দিয়ে বিড়ি বানিয়ে স্কুল যাই 10টার সময়, স্কুল যেতে ফের খাবার খেতে ফের যাই দিয়ে এসে তেসে বিড়ি বানিয়ে।
The main problem with the BD workers and their children who are also engaged in the BD rolling along with their families is that they are exposed to all the health hazards which are seen in case of the adults. And since they are being exposed from their very tender age, the main problems which we see in adults, they are often exaggerated in case of children. I can give you an example, like the tuberculosis which you see in the adults is much more common and much more hazardous and much more severe in case of children.
West Bengal is above all known for its cultivation of jute and the jute industry. The rural child labor here is employed in collecting and seasoning the jute plants. The plants are washed and beaten to shreds in a stream carrying arsenic pollution, and therefore it causes severe skin disease. Look at their hands. Employment in an early age seems to lead to an early marriage, children and misery. Girls tend to get married at 11 to 12 and boys at 14 or 15. Look at this girl child, Basanti Roy. She is married off in a hurry.
The worst form of child labor exists in rural India is the bonded labor system. We have come across the children who have been born in slavery and they were forced to work for their employer without their knowledge or without any kind of convincing argument that why they are forced to work for that employer. Because their parents or even grandparents or great-grandparents have borrowed a small amount of money from the parents or grandparents of the employers, And that's why the children are supposed to work and forced to work in agriculture sector, looking after the animals, fetching water, and so many other domestic and household things in the villages of landlords and the rich people.
An abnormal life of all work and no play in childhood may cause mental perversions and even lead to crimes. Then the children may have to be detained in bostels meant for juvenile delinquents. Child labor and exploitation are not the only results of poverty. They also perpetuate poverty. The National Institute of Rural Development is advocating for mainstreaming the issue of elimination of child labor in all rural development programs. Henceforth, poverty alleviation will have to concentrate on families with child workers first. The rural development program should focus on the issues of children among the poor and vulnerable communities, especially in the child labor endemic areas.
We should try to mainstream the issue of child labor into rural development programs in such a manner that whenever we are implementing rural development programs like SGSY, SGRY, Indira Awas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Sadak Yojana, and other such important programs, we should try to ensure that the households in rural areas which are very poor and vulnerable and they have got working children in their household, they should be given preference in these programs with a view to ensuring that these households are given access and opportunities to improve their living condition, and with their sustained income they are in a position to send their children to school.
While the provision of free and relevant quality education is the most effective way to put an end to child labor, tackling poverty through rural development programs is another important dimension of the strategy. There is a need for a transition arrangement for older children who have already missed the bus of their formal education.
All those children who are out of school are potential child laborers. What is happening, if you see, most of the child labor population in this country are in the age group of 10 or 11 plus. So those children who are even enrolled in primary schools in the rural areas, they drop out before completing 5 years of schooling. Then maybe they are keeping idle for a couple of years or 1 year. Then gradually they start doing some work, and at the age of 11 or 12 they become full-time workers. So there is a continuum between out-of-school children and children who become full-time child workers.
The International Labour Organization, from its inception, has made child labour one of its central concerns. It was the ILO in 1919 that stipulated that there should be a minimum age to enter employment, and in 1992, the International Programme on the Elimination of Child Labour, or IPEC, was established. ILO Convention 182 calls for immediate end to worst forms of child labour.
Education and the elimination of child labour have to go hand in hand. The ILO experience in working with our partners has shown in many instances that that can work, but that it is critical to ensure that education is part of it. To ensure that some alternative income opportunities are there. Various approaches are feasible. In the ILO in particular, we have worked with self-help groups of families, of women, to ensure that they have income to make up for income that is potentially lost when the children do go to school. But the overall lesson is that it is really a concerted effort that is needed. And the district level seems to be the most appropriate level, because the district collector, his colleagues, the communities in the district, the villages, can work together with the support from international agencies like the ILO, our partner organization UNICEF, to address the child labor problem.
The Convention on the Rights of the Child, or CRC, adopted by the United Nations in 1989, is the most universally accepted human rights document in the history of the world. In April 2000, representatives from 185 governments met at Dakar in Senegal and committed themselves to achieve education for all by 2015. The estimate for this is $10 billion a year up to 2015. It is a small amount when you think of the global military spending, which is $839 billion a year. The Government of India announced the National Policy on Child Labour in August 1987. The strategy consists of enforcement of child labour laws, rehabilitation of child labour, prevention of child labour, improving the economic status of poor parents through various anti-poverty and employment generation programs. The program envisages identification, withdrawal and rehabilitation of working children through the National Child Labour Projects, or NCLP.
We have an exclusive program for prevention of child labour that is under the National Child Labour Project NCLP. So there we have got 50 schools all around the district. Every school is having around 50 students, where these child labourers, erstwhile child labourers, they have been accommodated, and the government is paying them monthly stipend also. So they are pursuing their studies, and after 3 years of studies they are being mainstreamed into the regular classes.
నేను ఇంతకుముందు సీడ్పత్తి పోయేవాడిని అక్కడ ఎంతో కష్టం ఉండే సార్. చెట్టు చుట్టూ తిరగాలి, మొగ్గలు గిల్లాలి, వాళ్ళ కష్టం ఉండేది. ఏమన్నా 5 నిమిషాలు కూర్చుంటే కూడా సార్ వాళ్ళు స్వాకారాలు పీచుకేసి కొట్టేవాళ్ళు సార్ ఇంతకుముందు మమ్మల్ని. ఇప్పుడు ఇక్కడ అటువంటి కష్టం ఏం లేదు సార్. మాకు బాగా చదువు చెప్పే సార్లు ఉన్నారు, అంత బాగుంది. ఇక్కడ మాకు అన్నం కూడా బాగా పెడుతున్నారు. మా ఇష్టం వచ్చినప్పుడు ఆడుకోవచ్చు సార్.
In order to address these issues, of late we have started around 40 child labor schools in 5 blocks of Jangipur subdivision. This is a very new initiative which covers only around 2,000 children of that subdivision. We need more such schools so as to provide education to large number of children who are still left out. Besides that, we have put in concerted efforts in our ongoing programs of Sarv Shikha Vision, where our main focus is to bring all children of the age of 5 to 14 years within the ambit of school education program.
The overall strategy is really to address this issue holistically. That means we need to look at how do we get children into school and keep them in school so that they're not available to be in the workforce. We need to look at policies and programs that the government is instituting to ensure that enforcement is done, that there are other options for families in terms of income generation, so working with women's self-help groups becomes very important. We also need to make sure that there's comprehensive strategies and interdepartmental coordination, because this is a problem that requires different actors coming in at different levels to ensure that children are prevented from being in the workforce, and then those that are in the workforce need to be taken out.
The Supreme Court's judgment on right to education in J.P. Unikrishnan versus the state of Andhra Pradesh in 1993 has already transformed an incremental development goal into an entitlement of all children up to 14 years by pronouncing the right to education to be a fundamental right deriving from the right to life itself. The MV Foundation is an exemplary NGO based in Secunderabad which has done excellent work for a decade now in freeing rural children, hundreds of thousands of them, in 2,500 villages of Andhra Pradesh and giving them formal school education. The achievement has attracted the Magsaysay Award for its founder, Dr. Shanta Sinha.
Any program on abolition of child labor should first start with a definition of who constitutes child labor. And from our experience, we have found that the best definition that is possible is to look at all children out of school as child labor. And if one will have to work towards abolition of child labor, we must put them all into a full-time formal day school. The reason why one would emphasize on defining children out of school as child labor is to see that it encompasses children who are working for wage, encompasses children who are working without wage. In fact, it encompasses all those children who are working in agriculture and who are working as farm servants, as bonded laborers. It also encompasses those girls who are doing invisible, unnoticed, hidden work for the families in fetching water, fuel wood, carrying siblings, and perhaps a wide range of children who would otherwise been left out if they were not defined as child labor.
నాకు చదువుకోవాలనిపించింది, 10 రోజులు చేయాలనిపిస్తే మళ్ళీ మా అమ్మలు నేను వీడికి ముందు క్యాంపుకు తోలుకొచ్చిండ్రు. క్యాంపుకి వచ్చినాక మళ్ళీ పోయినా, మళ్ళీ ఇంటికి వస్తే మళ్ళీ నాకు ఉండబుద్ధి కాకపోతే మళ్ళీ మా అమ్మల జీవిస్తే మళ్ళీ పోయినా. మళ్ళీ పోతే కూడా అదే పని చేయించిండ్రు. చెరుకు తోటల్లో కలుసుడు, పసుపుల్లో కలుసుడు, కంకరేర పోకడ, బావి పనికి తోలిస్తే మళ్ళీ రాళ్ళు ఇళ్ళు అవన్నీ ఎత్తితే మళ్ళీ నాకు ఒక్కొక్క మళ్ళీ మా ఊరు సార్ కాడికి ఒకసారి నేను పోతా మళ్ళీ చదువుకుంటా నేను అంటే కూడా మా అమ్మలు తోలేరు, మా మామ వద్దన్నాడు.
Working children again are of course subjected to discrimination, social discrimination because of the caste in which they are born. In fact, if you see most of the children working in rural areas, they do all kinds of job. They tend the cattle of the master, they clean the cattle shed, they take their cattle out for grazing. But yet, in most cases, these children are not, they are never allowed inside the house of the upper caste landowners. These children, even if they are given some food, these children are made to sit outside and eat the food. So in terms of child labor, it may affect all children in the same way, but Dalit children are doubly exploited in terms of social as well as economic.
అలాంటి పిల్లల్ని మన ఇట్లాంటి స్కూల్స్లో కానీ లేకుంటే గవర్నమెంట్ స్కూల్స్లో కానీ తీసుకురావాలంటే మనం ఎటువంటి కష్టం చేయాలి, ఏం చేస్తే
ర్యాలీ చేయాలి సార్, ర్యాలీ చేయాలి సార్,
ర్యాలీ చేయాలి.
అవును సార్, ర్యాలీ చేసి పిల్లలు పనికి పోకూడదు, పనికి పోకుండా బడిలో చదువుకున్న అనకాస ర్యాలీ చేయాలి సార్. ఇంటింటికి వెళ్ళి మంచి మాటలు వాళ్ళు చెప్పాలి సార్, అక్కడ అన్నం అంతా బాగు పెడతారు, చదువు బాగుంటుంది, మీకు ఇక్కడ మీకు పనికి పోతే కష్టం ఉంటుంది కదా, అక్కడ కష్టం ఉండదు అని చెప్పుకొచ్చి తోలుకొచ్చినాడు సార్.
తల్లిదండ్రులు ఒప్పుకోకపోతే
మన పోలీసు వాళ్ళు చెప్పాలి సార్.
టీచర్, కలెక్టర్, పోలీస్, టీచర్, నర్స్. నేను చదువుకొని కలెక్టర్ కావాలనుకుంటున్నా.
His name is today. We are guilty of many errors and many faults, but our worst crime is abandoning the children, neglecting the fountain of life. Many of the things we need can wait. The child cannot wait. Right now is the time. His bones are being formed, his blood is being made, and his senses are being developed. To him we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today.
వస్తున్నాం పిల్లలం, ఆ రేపటి లోకం మాదే. వస్తున్నాం పిల్లలం, ఆ రేపటి లోకం మాదే. వస్తున్నాం పిల్లలం, ఆ రేపటి లోకం మాదే. వస్తున్నాం పిల్లలం, పాలు మరచి మరువంగని పని భారం మోసినాం, పెద్ద
పిల్లలకు చూపెట్టి రెక్కలిరుగా చేసినాం గౌర మర్యాదలన్నీ మీకా బాల్య నిర్బంధం మాకా కదలి కదలి వస్తున్నాం కదలి కదలి వస్తున్నాం 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 పిల్లలం ఆ రేపటి లోకం మాదే మాదే